Honorable Franz Manderson, Acting Governor. Honorable Tara Rivers, Minister of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs. Honorable Wayne Panton, Minister for Financial Services, Commerce and Environment. Mr. Winston Conley, Counselor for Education, Employment and Gender Affairs. Mr. Kristen Sekou, Acting Chief Officer, Ministry of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs. Acting Deputy Chief Officers in the Ministry of Education. Other Chief Officers. Mrs. Shirley Waller, Chief Education Officer. Ms. Shari Smith, Director Sunrise. Mr. David Marshall, ICCI President. Dr. Avis Glaze, our featured speaker. Dr. Leif Dunn from the University of the West Indies. Education Council members. Other officials from the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education Services, PTA presidents, other specially invited guests, educators, teachers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. That was definitely a mouthful. Our theme this year is Engage, Learn, and Connect, and I think we can all agree that that's a very apt theme as educators. It represents what we want to do in our classrooms with our students, and it represents what we want to do as lifelong learners. I welcome you to the 2015 National Education Conference, and at this point I will invite Mr. Sekou to bring the official welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Is everybody wide awake and ready to go? You sound like students. As you see, I'm on the agenda to give the official welcome. I really just wanted to come up here and say good morning and welcome to you all. And I know that we're going to have a very exciting and enlightening conference. I know that because most of what's being delivered is being delivered by you. I would like, though, to take this opportunity to invite Mrs. Shirley Waller to join me, because although I am slated to give the official welcome, and although Mrs. Waller will be making a presentation at 3:30 today, I think it would be appropriate for her to address you one last time as Chief Education Officer, and for her to bring the official welcome.
Protocol having been established, just for me to say good morning to all of you, friends, colleagues, fellow educators, and all of us who are engaged in the education endeavor. And in that, I include our ministers of government, our counselors, and of course, our deputy governor, because we're all engaged in this enterprise of education together. It's my pleasure and my privilege to welcome you to the 2015 Education Conference. As Chief Education Officer over the past 7.5 years, it's been my honor each year to welcome you back to the new school year and to mark the growth and change in our system. Year on year, as I've done that, we've charted incredible gains across our system. Those results over the past few years were never achieved by chance. We've moved our system from a long-standing status quo, in which about 1/4 of our students were successful, to a new status quo, in which that proportion has reached and exceeded 2/3 of our students, nearly tripling the positive results in those 7.5 years. But this kind of steady improvement is not the work of chance. Instead, it comes from your work, your efforts to exemplify in our schools the imperatives that today's conference set out for us. Engage, connect, and learn. We have become, sometimes painfully, a learning institution. An institution which learns from its mistakes and moves on to ever greater successes. Unfortunately, and sometimes painfully, learning is about change. When we measure gains in learning, we only can do so by looking at what has changed. If nothing changes, there's no learning. Our mission over the past 7 years was set out in a document that's too often forgotten in talking about the trajectory of education in the Cayman Islands. A bit less than 10 years ago, the education community was brought together in an unprecedented way to engage all stakeholders in charting a course to bring about systemic improvement in our schools. This was framed at the time as a key national priority. And the rich and broad-based debate that followed, a debate which was focused on solutions rather than on problems, resulted in the national consensus on the future of education in the Cayman Islands, a roadmap for change in our education system. That document defined the vision that shaped our journey as a system in the years since. As a system and as a country, we aspired to do better, to reach higher, and together we have worked to transform that vision into practice and into demonstrable results. Nearly a decade of hard work later, your efforts have given us this new status quo. Still an imperfect system, still a system that needs to grow, but a system in which far more children flourish and succeed. A system which is increasingly data-rich and data-driven, but driven too by a vision of equity and access, with the value and importance of inclusive education now established as a basic principle. Every year we've celebrated our gains, which by any measure have been outstanding, but always with the caution that there is still much more to achieve. So today's conference calls us to renew our commitment to excellence. It calls us to consider the next steps in implementing the vision of ever greater achievement. As educators, we are engaged in a great and critical work, the development and empowerment of our children, and through them, the development and empowerment of this country. Every vision, no matter how powerful, requires that renewal and recommitment. Today is a day for us to consider our responsibility to engage, to connect, to learn, and to seek new ways to engage ourselves in that endeavor. Every vision, as I said, requires ongoing renewal. As I leave this work that I have loved so much, and the system in which I have invested so much of my life, it's my hope that you will find that renewed vision. Today is our investment in you and in your potential. As Ms. Monteith takes on the role of Chief Education Officer in the days to come, she will chart a new path into what I hope and pray will be ever greater things. As educators and as the public education system in the Cayman Islands, it is your responsibility, everyone's responsibility, to come together to support her so that she can support you. We as a system and as a country must work together in a positive synergy so that we collectively engage, connect, and learn. All teachers and all students must have opportunities to succeed. Only through that positive partnership can we achieve our collective goals. Even as I go very far away, these goals are still my goals. This is still my country, and my commitment is still to you. I ask for each of you to use today as an opportunity to refresh, to renew, to re-engage, and to think about how collectively we move our country forward. I'll speak to you more this afternoon because I have many well dones to say, many thank yous to offer. But just in this initial public forum, let me thank all of you for what has been one of the greatest privileges of my life. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to invite all of us to stand for the prayer and the national song. Our prayer will be delivered by Trevor Carmola Jr., who's a student at Georgetown Primary School, and the national song will be sung by Jared Miles, a student of the Lighthouse School.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Trevor Carmola, and I'm from Georgetown Primary School. I will be singing a prayer for you today. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for waking us up on this beautiful morning and bringing us together. Thank you for every teacher who notices each child's special gift. Thank you for teachers who expect much and love enough to demand more. God of justice, help our nation to find a way to steward our health, to support teachers in their special calling. Father, sustain our teachers who give everything. Motivate teachers to keep on learning for the fun of it and make learning fun and meaningful for children. Bless today's program of events and inspire teachers so that learning will not cease after today. Let these lessons make their lives fruitful and happy. We pray these things in the name of our great teacher, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Jared Mouse. I'm from the Lighthouse School. I'm going to do the national song. So hands by your side.
Please, let's give them another round of applause. That's an extremely tough act to follow. I was planning to sing the rest of my presentation, but I'll definitely speak it now. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Tara Rivers, Minister for Education, Employment and Gender Affairs, to come and give her remarks. Minister Rivers.
Talk about putting pressure. I'm hoping you were not expecting me to sing my presentation. But, you know, protocol having been established, I want to say once again, thank you all for being here, first and foremost, to our educators, our teachers, our principals, our members of faculty in our schools, as well as the numerous dignitaries and other special invited guests. And it's really encouraging to see members of the PTA here as well for some of the schools, and it just shows the kinds of partnership that we as a government, we're trying to promote: partnership with the communities, partnership with tertiary institutions, partnership with ministry, DES, and of course, first and foremost, having parent involvement is key. So, having said that, before I actually go into my formal remarks, I also want to give and publicly congratulate and thank our outgoing CEO, Mrs. Shirley Waller, for all of the work that she has put into helping us to get where we are today. And as she said in her presentation, and as I'm about to elaborate in mine, it is really about building. The building blocks were set over 10 years ago. A further iteration of that was developed through the National Strategic Plan, which was launched just before we took office. As upon taking office, this government committed to continuing that development and implementation of what has started before, and just building on, improving, and identifying and trying to find solutions to where the gaps exist. So I want to say thank you, Mrs. Waller, for your role in helping us to get to this place, and to say welcome to the incoming acting Chief Education Officer, who will help us then to continue to move the process forward ultimately for the benefit of our children. And that is really the focus of this administration, myself as minister, as Councillor Connolly as well, and the entire focus of what we're trying to do. It is putting our children first. I also want to give apologies on behalf of Councillor Connolly, who you may see leave during my presentation. It's not that he doesn't want to hear what I have to say, even though he hears me almost on a daily basis. He does have another very important appointment to attend, and I wouldn't want to have to answer to his other boss, his wife, in that regard, to say why he wasn't there. So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to the National Education Conference 2015. This year's theme, Engage, Connect, and Learn, is an extremely important one, as these concepts are the concepts that we expect to see in action in our classrooms every single day. The education of our children is the most important gift that we can give them to ensure their future success and the success of our country. Under your leadership as educators, our young minds progress in their journey in education, and they rely on you consistently to provide them quality teaching and to enable their learning and development. To this end, our mantra has to be and must continue to be children first, as every decision made as it relates to education must be made for the benefit of our children. It is only through this conviction that we may continue to raise our standard and work towards offering a world-class education system. You know, as educators, your job is truly monumental, as you currently prepare our students for jobs that do not yet exist in many cases. Teaching is no longer just about imparting knowledge. Students can get knowledge at a click of a mouse in most instances. It is much more about helping our children to become critical and adaptive thinkers, helping them to develop the tools to synthesize and analyze the amount of information, which is often readily available, as I said, by just Googling a key search word. Providing professional development opportunities, therefore, for you, our educators, are critical, and it's a critical component in helping you develop and to successfully fulfill your obligation in this regard. Ongoing professional development is a priority of mine. It is a priority of this government, and is also a fundamental building block to achieving Strategic Goal 1, as outlined in the Cayman Islands Strategic Plan for Education 2012-2017, which, as we heard in Mrs. Waller's presentation, was itself built on the work of the National Consensus on Education, which took place about a decade ago. As minister, as I first indicated, I think in my first speech to the incoming teachers gathering at the beginning of the 2013 school year, 2013-2014, I have committed to the continued implementation of the Cayman Islands plan for a strategic plan for education, seeking only to improve upon the implementation of the plan by identifying and, as I said, targeting the areas in the plan where I believe and where the government believes the plan in itself does not go far enough or has not been contemplated outright as key priority areas of focus. So some of the key priority areas of focus which have been identified, which strengthens and which helps to augment the plan, is the need and the provision for students with special education needs and/or disabilities. This is an area which is a priority of myself as minister and of this government, and we will continue to look at ways to strengthen the provision as it relates to our very special students in the system. The provision of conflict training and crime prevention strategy as it relates to education is also an area where we believe needs to have an investment and a focus, and this is where we have, as a government, has decided to focus on putting attention to augment what has already happened and what has already gone on in the planning phase of our evolution in education. A focus on technical and vocational education and training is also an area which we hear a lot about, and the ministry has been tasked to develop, along with DES and the schools, an actual strategy that targets the development of our technical and vocational education training and provision from the primary schools on up into the tertiary level. And another area of importance is focusing on international competitiveness and raising the standards generally of the schools and of the actual achievement of our children in the schools. And these are, among others, some of the focus areas that the ministry and myself as minister has charged the ministry and DES to really look at, ensuring that whatever plans are put in place, they're put in place to address some of these key priorities, which we couldn't wait till 2017 to begin to tackle, in other words. The commitment to strengthen leadership and build national capacity. Strategic Goal 1 refers to the ministries and the governments and the Department of Education's acknowledgement that facilitating regular and in-depth professional development opportunities for our educators is vital. We must continue to invest in you, our educators, and to provide opportunities for you to learn from one another and to draw from international best practice so that you can, in turn, ensure that our children have the best chance possible of receiving the highest quality education. In recognition of this important and necessary component in order to provide a world-class education system, this academic year, a formalized professional development policy and a professional development handbook has been developed and approved. In order to fulfill the specific achievement gaps and challenge teaching pedagogy, it is necessary to require professional development activities to be undertaken by you, our educators, and to provide opportunities for you to engage in such activities. Some of the ways in which we invest in you through the numerous professional development opportunities provided throughout the year but are not limited to the following programs, either developed and delivered face-to-face, through workshops, training, courses, coaching, and mentoring, as well as through online distance learning. And here are just a few examples of the ongoing professional development opportunities which you, as our educators, are available to take advantage of. There has been an introduction of standards-based writing guidance for years 1 through 3 launched late last year, and the guidance tool for years 3 through 6 to be launched this academic year. This professional learning tool has been developed to provide support for teachers' planning and practice. The guide aims to provide practical approaches and resources that supplement the learning objectives and pedagogy rooted in the 2008 Cayman Islands National Curriculum. Provision of level literacy intervention in the primary schools. This program is being utilized to target Year 2 government school students who are currently achieving below grade level in reading. The LLI programming is also being offered at John Gray High School with notable success. The provision of this program is a result of the public-private partnership with Life Limited. There is also the provision of the maths recovery training, which is an intervention-based approach to working with students that are struggling in mathematics. 2 cohorts of teachers have already been trained, and the second phase of training for the 3rd cohort will actually take place next month. And again, the provision of this program is as a result of the public-private partnership with CISPA. There's also the provision of Leaders in Primary Mathematics program with the understanding and recognition that each primary school needs teachers with strong understanding of mathematics and its teaching. This program is a 1.5-year program offered to Caymanian teachers to develop effective teaching of mathematics and to provide school-level support and coaches of maths. This professional development program forms part of the broader succession planning process for mathematics and other leadership roles. And I know many of you, or some of you in this room, are actively participating in this program as we speak. A specific professional development and training program to provide guidance as it relates to the use of physical intervention in schools, known as the Cayman Islands Safe Management and Risk Reduction Training, or CSMART for short, has been developed and launched earlier this year as well. The training package includes a number of components dealing with the understanding the cycle of behavior, de-escalation skills, and risk assessment procedures. To build internal capacity and sustainability, a train the trainer package has also been offered. And again, it's about creating that homegrown talent and to create those succession planning opportunities in the education system, which is so vitally important to us as a government, which has also been echoed by the Deputy Governor in his request to ensure that succession planning takes place throughout the system. The focus on strengthening the provision for students with special and additional education needs has been and will continue to be an area of focus in the coming academic year. In particular, special education needs coordinators have an important role in developing and monitoring provision for children with special education needs or disabilities in their schools. And as such, specific training and development is planned during the 2015-2016 year for SENCOs and for those persons who may be interested in becoming SENCO in the future. Thus, again, this will provide another opportunity to build leadership capacity and succession planning in the public education system. This year, through a partnership with the Ontario Principals Council, the ministry has developed and launched the International School Leadership Certificate Program, along with the members of the Department of Education Services as well, and school leaders themselves. This program supports principals and senior managers in developing strategic insights to support and promote effective practices in schools. This year, all government primary and secondary school principals and deputy principals have begun training pursuant to this 6-module program developed specifically for the Cayman Islands and the needs of our system as it stands today. On the other end of the spectrum, we also provide a newly qualified, or NQT, training program, and it is a structured program which offers support to teachers in their first 2 years of teaching. I'm sure I don't need to tell you how the first few years or first few moments in the classroom can be quite daunting, and so we recognize as a system it was important to provide this level of support for our incoming newly qualified teachers to ensure that we give them the best possible start, or that they have the best possible start in taking over the classroom. And this is an area that we will continue to focus on, and I will continue to ensure that I get regular updates as to what is happening in this area as well. There's also training provided to support assistants, those very key persons who support the teachers in the classrooms, through a program provided by the Commonwealth Education Trust. This program introduces support assistants to important theories about learning and to conditions which may help or constrain student achievement. So again, I thought it was important at this stage to really go through an overview of a number of professional development programs that are running in our system currently, but also to say that, again, the focus of today's conference, in keeping with the need and the theme to ensure that we invest in you, our educators, in your professional development, is absolutely vital. Because today's event brings together teachers and educators from all public schools and private schools who have chosen to take advantage of the offer that was extended to private schools to send representatives as well. The workshops planned later today provide an opportunity for you to learn from one another, to learn about local best practice which is being carried out in our system currently. But it also provides an opportunity to you to hear from a leading international expert in the area of education reform in the form of Ms. Avis Glaze. And I myself am very excited to hear her presentation to come. But we also have another participant that is here from the University of the West Indies, their Gender Institute, to help us to look and explore at issues as it relates to mainstreaming gender in education, which is another strategic priority area of mine, which is the consideration of issues related to gender mainstreaming in education. So I hope those of you that will be attending those workshops will find that that will be something that will be beneficial to your development as educators as well. However, strategic goal 4, build safer school communities and promote inclusion, is one of the cornerstones of this conference, as the focus in many instances will be on inclusion, making sure that we meet each child where they are in their learning and to help them and enable them to have the opportunity to fully engage with the material at hand. So, in keeping with the theme of today's conference, here is what will hopefully happen, and here is what I hope that you will get out of this opportunity provided to you as educators in our system. I hope that you will engage in the workshops you attend with the information to be imparted and the discussions to be had. I hope that you contribute your knowledge and your experiences to help enrich the lives of your colleagues in this regard. This conference, as well as all the other professional development activities that I've outlined earlier, affords you the chance to engage with new teaching ideals, with new teaching methodologies and resources before engaging with our children. A part of the engagement of our children has to do with using inclusive teaching methods. Throughout this conference, you will hear a lot about inclusion, as that, again, is the underlying focus of this year's Professional Development Conference, to engage, connect, and learn. The second aspect of today's theme is connect. The ministry facilitates professional development opportunities with the agenda of bringing our teachers together to not only help to best equip you for the critically important task of providing the best teaching possible in order to engage our young minds in your care, but also with the intention to create the opportunity to connect with each other. This is an important aspect of your work today and in your work day to day in your respective schools. The opportunity to come together, to work together, to become united, and how you tackle certain issues or how certain methods should be adopted, or what are the best practices, as I said, that's currently existing in our program now that some colleagues may or may not be aware of, is vital to helping to create that connection and unity between yourselves as educators, but also that connection and the connection and connectivity of our children with the system and with the material that we want them and we expect them to be able to engage with. So creating that foundation of working together collaboratively is another key priority and focus of today's conference. The final part of today's theme, learn, is in essence what it is that we expect our children to do when they come to school. And it is also the emphasis of today's professional development program is to inspire the need, the desire, if you don't already have it, which I doubt there's anybody in this room that doesn't. You wouldn't be gravitating to this profession if you didn't yourself believe in the notion of lifelong learning. Today's conference is an opportunity to help, to inspire, further inspire, and to help you engage yourselves in your own process of development and learning. And in that way, you help our students to develop that sense and that passion for learning as well. And so I think, again, your role as educators, the importance of your role as educators cannot be underscored enough in my estimation. You create history, full stop. And by providing you with the best possible tools and opportunities to do that, to create a positive outcome is what we are aiming to do as a system, as a government, as a country. And I want to thank you for your commitment in this regard, and know that you have the support of myself as minister, of the government, of which I sit as a member of the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education Services, as you continue to engage, connect, and learn with each other, as well as with our children. I hope that today's conference is both useful and enjoyable, and I look forward to seeing today's fruits in action in your respective classrooms in the near future. Have a great conference.
Thank you, Minister Rivers. It's my honor to introduce our guest speaker this morning. Our guest speaker is an international leader in the field of education and is one of Canada's outstanding educators. With over 35 years' experience in education, she was Ontario's first Chief Student Achievement Officer and founding CEO of the Literacy and Numeracy Secretariat. She has worked with educators and education reforms in South Africa, Australia, England, Finland, New Zealand, Singapore, Ireland, Germany, the Caribbean, and many parts of the United States, to name a few. As one famous cricketer once said, all over the world and other places. She's no stranger to us. She's been here before, and we've enjoyed her delivery, and once again, I would like to welcome Dr. Avis Glaze.
Good morning, everyone. With protocol already established, let me first of all say how delighted I am to be back here. I thank you all, I thank the ministry, and I thank Kiva as well for making it possible for me to return. I also bring greetings from Canada. I lived in Ontario, and a lot of what I will talk about happened in Ontario, but I recently moved to British Columbia. Much better weather out there. But I came to Jamaica. I was in Jamaica at Church Teachers College, where I was trained as a teacher. I'm sure it's almost 40 years ago. I'm letting you know my age. So I also bring you greetings from Church Teachers College. I go back there tomorrow. They have their reunion, their 50th anniversary. So thank you very, very much for this possibility. You have one handout. You will notice that document, What Works. And I'd like to give you a quick background to that. When I was in charge of the system reform in Ontario, I went out to all the universities, tapped the professors there, asked teachers to send their questions to us, and we got university professors to write these monographs for teachers. So there are hundreds of them on the website, which you can download free. If I were in a school, I would download all of them and put them in a binder, because it's just about any question that a teacher could ask. So let me point you to that. I I do not only deal with educating the minds, I also like educating the hearts, especially when we want to have a holistic approach to education. I love poetry. You may remember when I was here the last time, I read a poem. This time, I'm only going to do one verse, because we don't have a lot of time. Kiva has told me she will be watching me from the back, and she's going to get me off the stage in half an hour. So I don't have a lot of time. This one is called, though, And So They Come to Us. Think of that. And so they come to us, the speeding summer gone, with faces mirroring their past. Some show remembrance of last June, and some of yesterday or of this morning. For no child comes to school alone. They come with hopes and fears and dreams. They come with memory of home. The mother's kiss, the father's fond embrace, of grim reality, of emptiness. Some mothers have no time to wave goodbye. A father has no face who's not known, who never was or who will never be. And it goes on, and so they come to us. What a privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to be a teacher today. How many of you are proud and you can say at any party, what do you do? I am a teacher. I say that with pride. May I hear you say that? I am a teacher. I chose that profession. And I'm sorry I can't walk around, which I love to do. I chose that profession many, many years ago. When I was a young girl growing up in rural Jamaica, I wasn't from Kingston. I wasn't from Montego Bay. I was from St. Elizabeth. You people from here. And I remember, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to be a lawyer. I used to watch Perry Mason every night, thinking I was going to be a lawyer. That tells you how old I am, doesn't it? Until I met a wonderful teacher, Miss Bogle. Did I tell you that story last time? Maybe not, but you may not remember. And you know, the reason that that is important, I was recently speaking in Scotland. I've spoken now in some 40 countries. And somebody showed me St. Andrews University, and I remember Miss Bogle came from St. Andrews University. She was in Jamaica teaching. I went to a school which shall remain nameless. And as a rural girl, I know I didn't feel the way I should because of some issues there. A great school, a great education, but there are always social aspects of schooling, which puts gradations and hierarchies and so on. But Miss Bogle, I will never forget one day in class, we were studying one of those books with the N-word. There was laughter, and Miss Bogle stopped the class. I've never seen a teacher so angry. She was the first one who did that. And I thought right away in that classroom, I no longer want to be a lawyer. I want to be a teacher like Miss Bogle. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, one night we had the terrible news Miss Bogle was killed in a car accident. So when I was in Scotland speaking about how I became a teacher, somebody in the audience came up to me and said, I know her family. And they connected me with Miss Bogle's brother. He said, my sister's death in Jamaica was not in vain. Here is a young Jamaican girl now speaking in Scotland about the impact Miss Bogle had on her. I'm telling you that story, ladies and gentlemen, as educators, regardless of where you work in the system. Even when I was an education officer, I was a teacher. Do not ever forget the impact, the long-lasting impact you have on your children. So it is a wonderful profession. Okay, now, I encourage you then to continue to throw starfish into the safety of the waves. I'm sure you know the starfish story. How many people know the story of the starfish? Many people do, so I won't go over that. But but because many people don't, let me liken you, because I noticed that there weren't many hands. I was going to move right on, but there are not many hands up. It said the old man walked the beach at dawn. He noticed a young man ahead of him picking up starfish and throwing them into the safety of the waves. But why are you doing this? The beach goes on for miles and miles, and there are millions of starfish. How can your efforts make a difference? And he picked up the starfish and threw it into the safety of the waves. It makes a difference to this one, he said, and moved down to the next. As teachers of all children, you are picking up starfish every day of your lives and throwing them into the safety of the waves. What a privilege it is to be a teacher today. There are many themes, but with only half an hour, I may only be able to touch on a few of them. I will just proceed and see how much I can get done. And would you believe I was stupid enough last night to include more slides? But Michael Fullen, everyone knows Michael Fullen. I had a conversation with Michael last week because he used to say that we should have 90 to 95% of success in schools. Michael said, Avis, I have changed. He said, the new mission of schools is to have 100% success. Now, I'm sure some of you are saying to me, oh, Avis, be realistic. That's not possible. I'm sorry I won't be able to engage you in conversation, but I hope you'll continue those conversations in your staff. If you say 50, 60, 70%, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, what if your child was one of the percentage that's not possible? If I had a child, I have no children, but I've had all those in Ontario, 5,000 schools. But if I had a child, I would want my child to be successful in the publicly funded education system. That's the challenge. If your country is to continue to remain great, and you have such a wonderful country, do not take it for granted, ladies and gentlemen. Countries do not remain great if people are uneducated. Yes? If you want to see crime increase, just make sure you don't educate your children. This is too nice a place not to be continue to be one of the gems in the world. As teachers, you hold the future of the Cayman Islands into your hands. And I don't want you to look at anybody else and say it's their responsibility. We tend to do that. It's the people above us, it's their fault. If only they would. As a teacher, you may or may not want to hear this message. We must take responsibility for the future of the island. You have those children so many hours of the day. You do not only teach their minds, you teach and mold their character. Now, character development is a big area of mine. I initiated character development in Ontario schools. The Premier was so impressed with where we started in York Region. Absenteeism had increased. Children were learning more because teachers were spending less time on discipline and so on. But the Premier asked all of Ontario to have character development programs. So then that helped to deal with the behavior and the discipline issues. So you educate minds, you educate hearts, and behavior as well. But the new mission of schools, and please challenge me later on, I'll be here for the day. All the yeah-buts, yeah, Avis, but. This is a time, ladies and gentlemen, we can no longer have yeah-buts. And if you don't know how to do it, there's always somebody on your staff who knows how. But as the minister said, we have to learn with and from one another. Because none of us can do it all. But let's seek out the people on your staff, develop that collaborative approach. And there's no strategy that I could tell you about that someone in your staff is not already doing. But we have to open our classrooms. You know, one of the things about schools, and I visit schools all over the world, you see people have even covered over the part of the door that you can see into your classroom. Have you seen that too? Yes, yes. Remove that. Open the door. Let people come in. I could go to another teacher and say, I don't know how to teach fraction, and I know how you know how to do it. Come and observe my class. We must be learners. The minister talked about lifelong learning. You cannot say, I went to teachers' college. To me, that was 50 years ago. I'm telling you my age. But every year I have taken courses to this day. My last training was the John Hattie training on visible learning. Every year I have continued my learning. And the more I learn, the more I know I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. Education is for learners if you want your children to be learners. But 100% of our students, nobody wants to be a part of the 5 or 10% that's not achieving. Parents are expecting it. Politicians are demanding it. For international, again, I was so happy to hear your minister speak about international comparability. Those are words that I've used very often. I used to say to Canadian teachers, you're not educating children just for Canada. They are world citizens. You are educating global citizens. So you must be aware of what's happening elsewhere. Oh, my time is going so fast. Okay. Now, improving schools then becomes a global priority, ladies and gentlemen. And people like McKinsey and Company have said that. Inclusion, therefore, is very, very important. All children can learn, given time and proper supports. And we must make sure. By the way, these are, the slide backgrounds are slides from Canada, British Columbia, where I live. So I just wanted to share those with you, many of those, okay? There must be then some key beliefs and some key practices. Let me go back for a moment. And what are some of those going to be? Because a lot of what happens, ladies and gentlemen, is in our minds. I encourage you to engage in a process of self-exploration. What are my beliefs? What are my values? Because those shape behavior more than we think. And I had to go through this process myself. I'll share just a few of those with you, just so you can think of yourselves. Education is the ultimate tool of empowerment, and that all students can learn and achieve. There is a moral imperative. That's why we enter teaching. Nobody has to tell us what to do to make all students improve. There's a moral imperative. I believe strongly that the way systems improve, again, I commend the minister, is through capacity building. If teachers knew what to do, they would have done it. If they don't know, they don't need to be beaten upon, as some countries do. They don't need to be called names. I've yet to meet a teacher who didn't go into teaching for the right reasons. Isn't that the truth? Yes. But if you're not getting the results that we all want, it means that we have to build school-based capacity. Work with the entire staff. Each one teaches one. That's how we improved in Ontario. School-based capacity building. I'm going to give you another challenging one. And I know that if I had time to talk with you, you may challenge me. The old outcomes-based philosophy. Schools control the conditions for success. I can just see some people getting a little bit upset. But what about the homes? What about the parents? Ladies and gentlemen, as a young teacher, do you know what belief I developed? Parents are sending us the best kids they have. They're not keeping the brighter ones at home. Good. So, it means, ladies and gentlemen, that when the children come to our school, It's for us to find out what their needs are and to address those needs. Again, I'm sorry I cannot talk with you about that because not many teachers believe that. Some teachers still believe, I can't do it, Avis, because of the homes. Well, I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if public education is to survive, and in some countries, you know what people are doing? Pulling their kids out of public schools, mortgaging their homes, and sending them to private schools. There's nothing wrong with private schools. I went to one myself, which was considered at one stage private school. Nothing wrong with private schools. But the public education system is the seat of democracy in any country. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where democracy begins, in your public schools. Where else can you teach them the values that you want to sustain this wonderful country? What an opportunity, what a privilege. But we have to change our thinking. And if we can't do it, you know what I had to do? When I was having trouble teaching children with special education needs, I made sure that I had the necessary courses and so on, including them in my degree programs, so that I could be better at it. Because the first time, I used to teach very bright children. The first time I had to teach special ed, do you know what I realized? I knew nothing about teaching. I had to start over, ladies and gentlemen, but I was a learner. And I was going to make sure that young Peter would learn. He was one of those who every special ed teacher who came into that school, he would fold his hands and said, make me. He would not work. I had to go one Saturday to his home. And as I went, I'd asked his mother, may I come and visit? I want to talk about this young man. I cannot have him sit in school, in class, and not work. And she had given me permission. Obviously, she didn't tell them. Can you imagine how upset he was when he saw me arriving at his home on a Saturday morning? But there he was with his father working on the car. I've never seen Peter so busy. So when I said to his mother, he was working really hard. She said, oh, he wants to be a mechanic. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I needed. That weekend, his mathematics was about buying car parts and so on. His essays, he had to go out and interview and write up the local car dealers. Peter became hooked on learning. There can be no throwaway kids, ladies and gentlemen. We must educate them all. But we have to be willing to unlock their potential. Teaching is not for people who are lazy. Teaching is for hard workers who are not going to stop until you can canvass your colleagues. In your class, I understand that young Jane is working very hard. She's not working hard in my class. What are you doing differently? Learn from one another. The answers are in your schools. Okay? Remember, I'm going to go through really fast, so you have to read fast now. Schools pay for years of special education when they do not start early. My message to you is, it's about prevention. Let's start early. Successful schools are those who do not only raise the bar for all children, but they also level. The focus has to be, for your country and your schools, on both excellence and equity. The two things are not polar opposites, ladies and gentlemen. They're two sides of the same coin. Because, as I said earlier, there's a cost when we do not educate all our children. As we know, the world's best performing system, there were studies done by McKinsey and Company about the world's best performing system. Do you know what they concluded? That in the world's best performing systems that they studied, they did three things. They got the right people to become teachers. They develop them into effective instructors, again, professional learning, professional development, and they put in place targeted support to ensure that every child was able to benefit from instruction. That's what the world's best performing systems have done. Korea, Japan, and all of those that you will read about on the internet. It seems simple, but the big thing, if you were to say, Avis, what is the one thing that we can do, based on my experience, to improve the system for all children? My answer would be engage in professional learning and development. Find out what the teachers know. Teachers will tell you. There are lots that they know, but they will also tell you the areas in which they need help. And target that in terms of school by school professional learning. Now, some people may think in some countries that you improve schools through testing. I'm not going to speak against it. An assessment for learning is a wonderful thing. But in some countries, I see testing, I see late tables, and I see punishment. That's not how people learn. People learn through professional development, professional learning, and that's how schools improve. Look at the places in the world that are doing well. Canada is one of them. We have an accountability office, but that accountability office does assessments, professional learning, what we find out what kids can do, what they can't do, and they, in fact, help teachers through those, taking the temperature from time to time. When I was in charge of education, I, like the Premier and others, were very much against rank ordering schools because we thought that that would simply demoralize our teachers. I'm going to forget about some of these. There's no way I can finish. I'm just going to be selective in terms of a few points. Let's consider the millennials. Who are the children we're teaching? They're not like us, ladies and gentlemen. They're of a different breed. Look at that. This slide is about 10 years old. The teacher must have asked for the homework. He said, just visit my website. Those are our children, and I congratulate our young student. Wasn't that wonderful this morning? I could not believe it. Those are your children, ladies and gentlemen. This country is going to be even greater with young people like that growing up. Challenge them. Do not let them become bored. When they're bored, they drop out of school. A lot of kids who are out of school are there because they were not engaged in their learning. We have to find ways of making it possible for all children to learn at their pace. Some will be challenged, but I'll make sure that all the issues, including behavior issues, are dealt with. Again, this little kid, look at that. Santa must have said, what do you want for Christmas? Visit my page on Facebook. When I was a director of education in Ontario, many years ago, do you know who taught me to use a computer? A high school student. I was humble enough to call him to my home. I had a computer in a box, I'm sure for months. I probably was afraid of it. And I realized one day I was visiting my schools, as proud as anything, and there was a kindergarten child on the computer, and I thought, I hope they don't ask me anything. And I went home and asked a high school student to come to my house to teach me about the computer. There's a lot that we can learn from our students. An excellent article, and many of you can Google this article, came out recently in the Maclean's magazine. And it talked about Generation Z or Generation Z, however you said it, however you say it. I would encourage you to Google that article and read it, because it tells us about this new cohort of students described as the millennials. They were born between 1980 and 1990s. There are about 2 billion of them worldwide, and they're going to change the face of education, ladies and gentlemen. And the Maclean's magazine said that these children are wired differently. They have grown up on the computers I've seen 2-year-olds and maybe younger on the computer. Can we teach them in the same way, the same slow way that we learned when they have been on computers since they were months old? I've seen a kid on the plane. There was almost a baby in the mother's arms with a computer, and as soon as she got the tablet, she was swiping it. I've heard of some of them now, when you give them a book, they're swiping the pages. Those are our children, ladies and gentlemen, swiping the pages of a book. It means that we have to change in order to address the needs of Generation Z, okay? So look at that Maclean's magazine, July 21, 2014. It will change your perspective as a teacher as they describe this new generation that we are responsible for. We cannot lose them. Just a few, and somebody will tell me when I must stop, just a few imperatives as I go through. As we realize the promise of diversity, pay special attention to what an equitable and inclusive school looks like. I have research done on the indicators of an equitable school. I will share some of that with Kiva, and those who are interested can have that. Focus on prevention. By the way, that's the BC ferries. Some of you might have been on the BC ferries. But when we focus on prevention, one person said, ladies and gentlemen, our objective should be a 3rd grade diploma that signals a student has achieved proficiency in both reading and math. 3rd grade diploma. Can you imagine that? In other words, they say we should be setting them up for success. Those first few years of schooling are so important. And in praise of kindergarten teachers, who are they? And grade 1 and grade 2 teachers who start students off in a positive way. Those skills will often determine whether or not they will drop out of school. Those first few years, very important. Okay, just a few more imperatives. Never underestimate a child's potential. Many of you have seen people who would say, when I was in school, they told me I couldn't do. Do not ever get into that. I see people now with PhDs who were told they couldn't learn. We are not judges of children's potential in that way. Arnie Bolt is a high jumper with one leg. Think of it, ladies and gentlemen, human potential and what that means. Many people would have told him, you will never be able to walk. You'll never be able to run. You will never be a high jumper. That's Arnie. So let us, as we go through in education, with an assets-based approach, look for the potential in all our students and never limit or underestimate it. I talked about emphasizing capacity building as well, which is the most important aspect of schooling or of learning for teachers. Emphasize cultural change. You know, when some people go into new systems, the first things they do is a reorganization. There's nothing that destabilizes systems more than reorganizations. Focus on building different cultures, mindsets, so that we can get the work done. I'm not saying organizations are not important. Don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying the focus in too many places is on the structural changes rather than on the culture of schools. What is your school culture like? Are people willing to help children at other times other than in class? Do you see every child in that school as your responsibility? Those are all cultural issues, ladies and gentlemen. I would encourage you on every staff, somebody who has done sociology, analyze the culture of your school. and talk about it in your staff meetings to see if there are any cultural things that would prevent rapid progress. Because culture very often gets in the way. I don't think I will tell you about how we improve the system in Ontario. It would take too long. But all I will say, we did a number of things. I would say we took care of the teachers and principals. We listened to them. We made sure that the approach was not done to them. I was out in the schools asking people what's working, what's not working. So teachers felt they had an input onto how to improve their schools. So that's an article I wrote, which I can make available if anyone wants it, okay? You will notice that in terms of our, and somebody has to tell me when I have 5 minutes left, because I have no, sorry I can't see you, but 5 minutes left? Okay, 5 minutes more. Just to show you how we have been showing steady improvement. Look at that movement in secondary schools. Now the numbers have changed. We have about 130 more graduates in our schools. Overall improvement. When I started in Ontario, 19% of our schools could be considered low performing. Very, very poor results. In 4 years, we were able to get that down to 5%. That's when I decided to retire and let others carry on the work. But you see that rapid drop in the number of low-performing schools by motivating, inspiring, building teacher capacity. Not anything that would take away from their good intentions and building their strengths to get the job done. So I believe that we can get results simply by building teacher and principal capacity. We have proven that in Ontario. Okay? Focus on reading and literacy development as #1 at an early age. Literacy enhances, literacy liberates, but more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, literacy is a human right. Go deeper. The minister talked about your priority areas. Go deeper in your priority areas. When I hear teachers talk in Ontario now, they have taken on the language, we must do this with a sense of urgency. The children cannot wait. They are only in school for a finite time, ladies and gentlemen, and then they're gone. Missed opportunities. Then they're gone to be members of our society. Do not miss those opportunities to educate hearts as well as minds. Very good. 5 minutes to go. Okay. I'm being reminded on all sides. Okay. I'm just going to be very selective. High expectations. I teased out what are high expectations for learning. And again, that I can share with you later. That laser-like focus on achievement. We talked about closing achievement gaps. Can it be done between rich and poor, boys and girls? Delighted the minister is going to focus on gender issues. My whole doctoral thesis was on gender issues in Ontario schools. So that is something I like very, very much. These days, thank you very much, so thoughtful. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know my concerns now? In the 70s, I was so concerned about the education of women. I'm still concerned about the education of women. But do you know where my head is now? The education of boys. Our young boys are being left behind. That's happening in every country, ladies and gentlemen. In every country. I was in England recently and they had a special program for working class boys, which is very, very important. So let us now focus, not to leave the girls entirely, but to realize that we must put a spotlight on our young men. They need role models. They need to step up to the plate. That strong research orientation I talked about, every school must have a few non-negotiables. If I were to come to your school and say, what are the non-negotiables in your school? Would you be able to identify them? You can't do it all, but the entire staff could say, we're going to do these 3 things. Improve literacy, improve numeracy, focus on nonfiction reading and writing. That's one way of improving achievement, you know. We're so good at narrative reading and narratives. Nonfiction reading and writing is the wave of the future. I probably have 3 minutes now. Okay. I'm just going to go through a few of them. One of the documents I helped to develop, ladies and gentlemen, in Ontario was the School Effectiveness Framework. I still think it's a great document which identifies all the things we should look for in our schools, but we used it as a self-evaluation. Staffs got together, not somebody to come in and do it. Staffs got together and they used it well to see what their strengths were and what their weaknesses were. Focus on instruction. That's the first thing that we hear from our researcher. Instruction itself has the largest influence on achievement, and excellence in leadership is second. In Ontario, we have, in terms of be aware of what's happening out there, what parents are saying. The push for back to the basics in Alberta, I don't have time to discuss that, but you need to do that. Mathematicians, our wonderful mathematician picked me up this morning. Is back to the basics the way to go? I don't know, but it's something because parents, is a backlash now. Because people are teaching math in a way that they're not familiar. So in Alberta, they are now getting back to the system to say, we want to go back to the basics. Is that a good thing or not? So you be aware of what parents are saying and how you're going to defend it when there's a pushback on the system. Okay, whatever you do, do not forget the arts in the curriculum, ladies and gentlemen. The arts sustains our society. We need the arts. Every school, if I were to visit your school, I would say, do you have uninterrupted blocks of time for literacy and numeracy? Okay, teacher development. Listen to what the students are saying. Engage me or enrage me. That's what they're saying to us. They're also saying, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. Okay, boys, advocacy. We are now focusing on our First Nations in Canada because they are the lowest in terms of achievement, the poorest in our society. Who are those in your society? Let's have targeted interventions for whoever they are. Okay. Building character is so important. I wish I had time to talk about that. Leadership development, professional learning, being responsive to change, as the minister said. Know thy impact, ladies and gentlemen. What difference are you making? I'm just going to, innovation and creativity are two areas that we need to focus on in our schools today. Is our curriculum preparing students to be innovative? That's a question we need to ask ourselves and develop that. Or let me go to the end then. My last slides. I'm feeling the pressure from the side here. These are some of the books that I've done. Strategies for Positive Behavior, Breaking Barriers, High School Graduation. Let me start with my favorite picture and a story, and I'm going to end with that. Some of you have seen this before. I understand that an anthropologist was doing an experiment in Africa, and on a branch of a tree she hung a basket of fruit, beautiful fruit ready to be eaten. And she said to all the kids, I'm going to count to 3, and when I go to 3, whoever gets that basket of fruit, it's yours to have. 1, 2, 3, nobody got up. The children, in their own way, quietly held hands, got the basket of fruit, sat down and ate it together. They said it's about Ubuntu. We're in this together. No one benefits at the expense of others. Ladies and gentlemen, you're educating hearts and minds. I encourage you to continue the great work, to build on the rich tradition. You have excellent plans, second to none in terms of philosophy and emphasis. But remember, we're creating a country, and that country is going to be built on character and achievement. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.